NASCAR says they might return to the LA Coliseum in 2023 after a very successful Busch-like clash. JTG Daugherty confirms that they're expected to return in 2023, and Tony Stewart says he has an itch to maybe return and do a one-off return in NASCAR. What's going, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start off all the paint schemes and sponsorship news. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. First paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Justin Haley's 2022 leaf filter scheme that we're going to see throughout the season. We actually saw his paint scheme at the Busch-like clash this past weekend where he was really fast before getting unfortunately crashed out by Kyle Larson. I like this paint scheme a lot. They did a really great job on it. Numbers in a really good position and a lot of good sponsorship utilization. Not much to say here. Pretty good looking paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to see it throughout the rest of the year, especially potentially in this year's Daytona 500. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Josh Williams' 2022 alloy scheme that we're going to see in multiple races in 2022. Pretty solid paint scheme in my opinion. I like it a lot. Cool to see the alloys following Josh Williams over DGM Racing. I believe that they sponsored Josh Williams last year, when he was DGM Racing. It's good to see they're going over to Beach Club Motorsports. Like this paint scheme a lot, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack in 2022. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Ryan Vargas' 2022 Storm scheme that we're going to see throughout the 2022 season. I like this paint scheme a lot. There was a contest that came out for Ryan Vargas where multiple sponsorships were working with them, and you had to decide which paint scheme you wanted, and the people wanted the Storm scheme, and I really like this paint scheme a lot as well. I think it's the best paint scheme of the four that were basically revealed. They did a really great job on it. It looks really nice, and I'm glad to see that we'll see this paint scheme throughout 2022. It's a pretty good paint scheme in my honest opinion. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Kyle Weatherman's 2022 Ellis tractor scheme that we're going to see at Daytona and Atlanta. I like this paint scheme a lot. It looks really good. They did a really solid job overall in this paint scheme. It's cool to see that Kyle Weatherman's also racing for DGM Racing in the 92 car. Overall, I like this paint scheme a lot, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack in 2022 as well. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Brett Moffitt's 2022 Hometown Lender scheme that we're going to see at Daytona in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Like this paint scheme a lot, like the color scheme, like the green. I think they did a really good job and a very solid job on this paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to see it out on the racetrack in 2022. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Michael McDowell's 2022 Horizon Hobby scheme that we're going to see in a couple races in 2022. Once again, Horizon Hobby is partnering up with Front Row Motorsports, and let me just say, I am super pumped up and super excited that RC is getting represented by NASCAR once again. This paint scheme is pretty cool in my opinion. It's just awesome to see that a company like Horizon Hobby is partnering up once again with Front Row. I like this paint scheme a lot, and I'm really happy to see RC getting some representation. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Zane Smith's 2022 ARMA scheme that we're going to see at Worldwide Technology Raceway. I like this paint scheme a lot. Really cool to see once again that RC is getting representation and ARMA also partnering up with Zane Smith. Really nice looking paint scheme in my opinion. And if you're in the Worldwide Technology Raceway area, there's a shop you can go check out called Checker Flag Hobby Country that my family owns. Come check it out and buy some parts. We got a lot of ARMA cars as well, but I like this paint scheme a lot, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack as well. And the final paint scheme as of now we're taking a look at is Tanner Gray's 2022 black tire scheme that we're going to see in 4 races in 2022, including in the Daytona opener. I like the paint scheme a lot. It looks really cool. Great to see the black tire is continuing to partner up with GGR Racing. Pretty cool to see that, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ethos Car Care. As was announced on Friday, the Ethos Car Care has partnered up with Ty Dillon and Petty GMS, and they will be an associate sponsor for them at the Daytona 500. Ethos Car Care, I don't really know much about them, but it's really cool to see that another company like this is continuing to work with new teams. And it's cool to see if they're jumping on. I think that's something that's really exciting and very cool to see if they're jumping on and working with a team like Petty GMS. Overall, very cool, really exciting, and I'm happy to see that they're working with them in 2022 as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Blaney. As Ryan Blaney revealed this past weekend that he has a new logo. And I will say, let me say this. I think this new logo looks really cool. They decided to change up the logo just a little bit. I think the logo looks really exciting. We got to see it actually revealed in a t-shirt. That's something that's really really And I think it's awesome to see that Ryan Blaney also has a new logo as well. And I'm glad to see that Ryan Blaney's partnering up with someone and doing a new logo. Looks really awesome. Looks really exciting. And I'm glad to see that he's going to have a new logo for 2022 as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Ross Chastain and LA Schools. As this past Friday, Ross Chastain and LA Schools have partnered up, and they are giving back to the community of Los Angeles, as they are giving back $250,000 this weekend with All Bike Kids, provide bikes for young kids in Los Angeles. This is something I think is really, really cool, especially in the community of Los Angeles where the streets are not in the best shape right now. I think it's something really, really cool, and I think this is a really, really awesome partnership that Ross Chastain is doing. I think that's something very, very exciting that they were able to partner up and do something cool like this, considering, especially LA, because like I said, is not in the best position. I think it's really, really exciting and very, very cool. They decided to partner up and do this with LA Schools. Cool to see that Nascar has gotten involved with this, and the mayor and Ross Chastain and Trackhouse have partnered up with them. I think it's very, very exciting, really, really cool, and I'm happy they got this partnership together as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Credit One Bank and American Express. As was announced on Friday that Credit One Bank and American Express have renewed, and NASCAR has renewed its official partnership with Credit One Bank and signed a multi-year deal with American Express, and they are launching a fresh NASCAR branded credit card. Car rewards include discounts on certain NASCAR tickets and other experiences. Credit One Bank has been partnered up with NASCAR for quite a few years now. I think they've partnered for the last 5 or 6 years. So it's really cool to see that Credit One Bank continues to partner up with NASCAR. It's also cool to see that American Express has also gotten involved with NASCAR, and they're also working with them in 2022 as well in a new branding deal. And it's cool to see that NASCAR continues to have their new card as well. I think that's something really, really exciting, and I'm really happy to see that NASCAR continues to work and wants to continue working with Credit One Bank and American Express. I think that's something really, really exciting, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Josh Berry. As this past weekend at Florence Speedway, Josh Berry was able to win the 2022 Icebreaker. Josh Berry, I think, pretty much dominated. There really wasn't much reporting around the Icebreaker, but what I heard, Josh Berry put on a really dominating clinic and really held off a lot of hard chargers in the late model events. It should not surprise anybody, considering Josh Berry is a really, really good late model racer and knows how to get it done around the track. So no major surprises here. He's a really, really good late model racer, so no major surprises. But I think it's also very, very cool and very, very awesome that he's going to go ahead and was able to win the Icebreaker. I think that's something really awesome, and I think it's really cool to see that, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jimmie Johnson and Colton Herta. This past weekend in Sweden, they had the Race of Champions this past weekend. They do this every single year with multiple drivers. Now, originally it was supposed to be Jimmie Johnson and Travis Pastrana who was supposed to get in the car, but unfortunately Travis Pastrana about a week or two ago got injured in a really bad accident doing, I think, a stunt for his Nitro Rallycross or Nitro Circus, whatever it is, and unfortunately got injured this past weekend. So Colton Herta basically took over, and they were very, very impressive. They beat some really, really good drivers. They beat Miss Schumacher and the German team, and they were able to get it to the finals. They almost ended up winning. I think Sweden ended up winning the overall event, which is no surprise there, considering both of the drivers that were in there. But I think Jimmie Johnson, Colton Herta making it to the finals, I think that's something really, really awesome and really, really cool at the same time. And again, very cool to see that Jimmie Johnson and Colton Herta were able to go out there and nearly win. They made it to the finals, and that's really, really impressive. And a lot of people say Jimmie Johnson is washed, but man, Jimmie Johnson did an incredible and a really, really good job. So congratulations to both of them on incredible success of their event, and glad to see that they were able to have a really, really strong race of champions. So congratulations to both of them, because I think they had a good year this year, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about this year's NASCAR All-Stars. As on Texas Motor Speedway's website, it looks like that qualifying with 3 laps and mandatory pit stops is going to be returning in 2022. For many, many years during qualifying, NASCAR basically has held qualifying for years when they were at Charlotte. NASCAR has basically had a mandatory pit stop where you do 3 laps. You have to come down pit road during those 3 laps and basically complete it. And I think it's a set amount of time within those 3 laps, how much time it takes combined, including that pit stop, is your time for the event. You have to come down pit road, do a mandatory pit stop, and this is how it's been. Now, for the last couple of years, in 2020 and 2021, they had that mandatory pit stop during, I think, Stage 3 or Stage 4 of last year's All-Stars at Texas Motor Speedway. But the NASCAR All-Stars is bringing it back. I think that this is overall very, very exciting that they're going to be bringing this back. I think having this event back, especially the mandatory pit stop, is going to make the event very, very exciting. So that's really, really cool that it looks like that's returning. I'm really excited about that. I'm glad to see that that event is going to be returning in 2022. Pretty cool, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Jordan brand. As it was announced yesterday, well, announced this past weekend, that the Jordan brand has signed Kurt Busch on as an official partner of 2311 Racing, and Kurt Busch will now be a sponsored athlete of the company. Jordan brand will run multiple primary paint schemes on the number 45 Toyota this season and be an associate partner for other races. I never thought in my days I'd see Kurt Busch ever go to 2311 Racing, and I never thought we would see Kurt Busch become a Jordan brand driver. And I think Bubba's already a Jordan brand driver as well. He's not allowed to wear the jerseys due to the Columbia branding that he has behind him. But Kurt Busch becoming a Jordan brand driver, I think is really, really awesome. And I think it's very, very cool to see that. And having Kurt Busch become a partner of that, I think is very, very cool. And again, cool to see he's got the logo. We saw that on his car. He basically had the Jordan logo on his car. Having him basically be part of the Jordan brand, I think is absolutely awesome and absolutely incredible. There's a few people that are already Jordan athletes, but I think it's really, really awesome, and I think it's really, really cool that he has become part of the Jordan brand. I'm very happy to see that Kurt Busch has become a brand part of the Jordan brand. I think that's really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Running Smoke. Now, this was reported by TobyChristie.com, and they reported that Dan Patrick and Campside Media will be making a true crime series around Derek White, who played a role in one of Canada's largest tobacco smuggling busts. Now, for those who don't know, Derek White was a race car driver for a couple years who was from Canada. But about 3 or 4 years ago, Derek White was basically banned for the sport for being involved in one of the biggest tobacco busts up in Canada. I don't remember which state it was or what area he was from that caused that issue, but basically Derek White was caught for a massive, massive tobacco smuggling bust that took place. And I never thought to say that we would see a true crime around Derek White, especially, but he's not been in the sport for the last couple years, and he's banned from the sport due to this situation. Overall, definitely really, really crazy for sure that they're developing something around Derek White on a show. I wonder what network it's going to be on. I don't know which network it will be on, but I think it's really cool to see that they're doing this. I think it's pretty awesome to see that they are developing a true crime series around Running Smoke. Pretty perfectly cool and really awesome to see that for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about Fox's ticker. Now, not many people really talk about Fox's new ticker, but Fox has a new ticker for 2022. If you take a look at the left side, they've actually decided to change up the ticker a little bit. They've got the numbers looking a little more video gamey and the numbers a little bit more smaller, but you also have, the screen a little bit smaller as well. In my personal opinion, I think the ticker actually looks a little bit better than last year's. You actually can read it a little bit more. And I think it's really cool how they updated as well. I do wish, though, over time that they would go out and put the ticker back at the top of the screen. I don't like that overall it blocks the left side of the screen. I wish that's something that they would change. But overall, I think the ticker looks pretty good in my opinion, and I think the ticker looks pretty cool. So that is Fox's ticker for 2022. I like it a lot, and I didn't really see many people talk about it, but Fox's new ticker looks pretty cool in my opinion. I will say, though, in 2022, Fox has a lot of work to do to fix a lot of the issues that they've had because Fox had a ton of problems in this LA Clash, and they've got a lot of issues to fix. Not someone we'll talk about in the episode, but I think it's really good. The Fox ticker is one thing that I will say is major, major positive. Out of all things that happened in the event, that's one thing I really liked about this event, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about the LA Coliseum once again. We're going to be talking about the LA Coliseum here in a lot of this episode, but on Friday night as well, multiple drivers were out on the track doing a little bit of a short track race and a little bit of promotion for the Super Bowl. The 4 drivers that were on the track were Dale Earnhardt Jr., Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, and Bubba Wallace. They did a little bit of short track race. They had Bubba Wallace basically lead the pack on the racetrack, and eventually we saw some passes on that short track race. We saw Chase Elliott lead a little bit, then Ryan Blaney lead a little bit, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. started getting up front. Now, like I said, the big reason that they did this little bit of short track race that they ended up doing was because of the fact that they were going out there and they were trying to promote they were trying to promote the Super Bowl. And again, you want to have a chance of promoting one of the biggest events, the Super Bowl. And what this promotion can do is they can promote the Daytona 500 and can get a lot of eyes on NASCAR. Considering how big this event could end up being, we're not sure how the ratings are going to be. But considering how big this event could overall be, the Super Bowl, how many people watch it, you want to get your eyes and your set on overall the Busch Light, especially on NASCAR, considering the Daytona 500 is now less than 2 weeks away. I think that what they did right there is really, really cool for promotion. So I thought that was really, really exciting, and I'm glad to see the NASCAR decided to go ahead and do a little bit of promotion for the Busch Light Clash. I think that's for the Daytona 500, excuse me. That's really, really cool, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lightning McQueen. Now, also on Saturday morning, Pixar's Cars Lightning McQueen Replica took to the real-life LA Coliseum short track on Friday and what looks like a scene out of the movie. Now, to actually get a little bit backstory on this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, where they did the filming for the California Speedway, I believe that where they took the filming was actually at the LA Coliseum when they filmed for Cars. So I think that's something that's really, really cool. They did a little bit of homage to the Cars movies by deciding to go to the California Speedway. Basically, I think they had the end of the first movie. So they had Lightning McQueen on the racetrack, which I thought was really, really cool. And of course, little kids are going to see that, and that's something that I think that they did a really, really good job. Overall, the promotion they had for this event and the things they did with this event, I thought were really, really exciting and really, really cool. And having Lightning McQueen on the racetrack, I think that's something that's not only badass, but also something that's really, really cool at the same time as well. So, very happy to see they put Lightning McQueen on the track. I think having him on the track is really, really important for the little kids especially, and really cool to see they got Lightning McQueen on the track as well. To be perfectly honest with you, that's really cool, and I'm happy to see that they did that little bit of promotion. I think that having promotion for the event, I think is really, really important, to be honest with you, and they did a really, really good job on the promotion as well. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Jesse Iwuji Motorsports. Now, it was announced just a few minutes ago that Jesse Iwuji Motorsports will be fielding a Chevrolet in 2022 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and it was announced that the number will be number 34, and Jesse Iwuji will be driving a 34 for majority races in 2022. Now, to give a little bit of backstory on Jesse Iwuji Motorsports, Jesse Iwuji Motorsports is a new team in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and this team is owned by two people. Jesse Iwuji, no surprise there, who is basically working in the Navy. And, of course, you have Emmitt Smith, a NFL Hall of Faming running back, who is basically working on the team as a whole. Like I said, they're a new team in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Now, looking at the chances of this team, they're partnering up with Chevy. They got a major partnership with Jim Campbell. What are my overall expectations for this team? I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't overall really have the highest expectations for this team just because they're a new team. Now, they are getting massive, massive backing for Chevy, which is going to help their organization. That being said, though, I do think that this team isn't going to do as good as I think some people expect it to be, just because, like I said, they are a new team and they don't have a lot of backing. Jesse Iwuji, I'll be perfectly honest with Jesse Iwuji. I don't think Jesse Iwuji is an amazing driver. I think he's an okay driver, but I don't think he's an amazing driver. If I was Jesse Iwuji, I focus on being the owner of the team, maybe doing a couple select races, but getting drivers on your team that have a little bit more talent than you do and trying to build your team up. But I will say that if they are getting a massive Chevy backing, I do think that they've got a pretty decent and a good chance to run decent. I think the ultimate goal for this team is try to at least start the year off, just get as many laps completed, try to qualify for the races. Because, again, we're going to have a lot of cars trying to enter and qualify for this year's Daytona Xfinity Series opener, and you're going to have to try to qualify into the event. So, overall, I wish this team the best of luck. And, again, they're fielding with Chevy. I think the goal is try to, by the end of the year, try to get some top 25s and some top 30s if they can. If they do that, I think that's going to be really, really good for the team. But there's a lot of competition this year, so they're going to have a lot of work to do. That being said, though, I think that's really, really cool and overall really, really impressive that they're going ahead and working. That's a pretty cool thing, to be honest with you. We're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Alvin Kamara. Now, Alvin Kamara last night was arrested for battery resulting in substantial body harm in Las Vegas. I believe that Alvin Kamara did compete in the Pro Bowl this past weekend, but unfortunately, like I said, he got arrested this past weekend. Now, of course, Alvin Kamara is running back for the New Orleans Saints, but he also works in NASCAR. So this isn't the best look for NASCAR, with someone who's working as a social growth and development guy is basically getting arrested. Not the best look for your sport overall as a whole. Again, it's just of right now, we don't really know how long he'll be in. He'll probably get out of jail very, very quickly. He apparently had been in a club, and apparently he got involved in, in a fight, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something really, really unfortunate that he got arrested because, again, having Alvin Kamara, who works in your sport, getting arrested for something is not overall the best look for your sport. So it definitely overall is very, very unfortunate that he did get arrested for what happened. If definitely gets convicted for it, that's not a great thing for the sport, and it makes the sport look overall really, really bad in my opinion. So overall, kind of crazy that Alvin Kamara got arrested. So the charges have been set. It looks like Alvin Kamara, we don't know how long he's going to be in, but Alvin Kamara got arrested this past weekend. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Dillon. Now, Ty Dillon actually was really fast in the last chance qualifiers, but it also was really, really aggressive. Ty Dillon actually got twice penalized for basically jumping the restart. Ty Dillon had jumped the first restart. It's very tough to say if he had intentionally jumped the restart or not. First one, if Kurt Busch was supposed to be the leader. You can in the restarts if you're second this time around. You can actually be ahead of leader when you get to the line. You just cannot jump the restart. And Ty Dillon, unfortunately, mashed the gas before Kurt Busch on the first one. And again, that one's very, very questionable. The second time, on the other hand, Ty Dillon clearly jumped the restart. And Ty Dillon had basically said some interesting comments in his post-race interview. He says it'll look worse than it really was, and he said he's not playing around in 2022. Ty Dillon said his NASCAR's rolling, and I will say Ty Dillon clearly jumped the restart on the second running. I don't understand what Ty Dillon was doing there in that second time. He was way ahead of the restart line, and he can't jump before the restart. That's why NASCAR basically ruled it that he had jumped the restart. Overall, the second last chance qualifier, by the way, was absolutely nuts. But I think, in my opinion, NASCAR got the right call right here by going ahead and penalizing, because you can't jump the restart like as far as he did. Again, Fox screwed up on that part by not showing what had happened, but in my opinion, he clearly jumped the restart by like 10 or 20 feet, was clearly jumping the restart, and NASCAR, in my opinion, got the right call. NASCAR was a little bit inconsistent with their calls throughout the race, I'll admit that, but I think that they made the right call in that situation. So overall, I think the NASCAR made the right call right here, and Ty Dillon, I think, will be fast throughout the year. It was really fast in the race. There's a little bit over-aggressive. I mean, should he be in the Cup Series? Who knows? But Ty Dillon basically jumped the end of the restart and got penalized for it in the race. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fontana. Now, this was reported by Adam Stern. Ben Kenny says ticket sales per Fontana's race weekend are thankfully trending pretty well, and he thinks LA market can support multiple NASCAR races. He adds that he said NASCAR is still doing due diligence on the Fontana short track idea, so it's unclear when it will happen. Now, we'll talk about Fontana here in the later portion of this episode, but let's talk about ticket sales for the LA market. I think it's really cool to see that at least the tickets are trending up for the Fontana race, considering there is talk that Fontana 2023 could convert to a short track, but there's also talk that Fontana may not, after all, convert to a short track in 2023. And I agree with Ben Kennedy here in regards to the fact that I think Los Angeles can support two races. And you have to remember that Fontana, the race, is like a little over, I think it's about an hour away from Los Angeles. It's a little bit farther away. Even though, like I mentioned, that it's an hour away, I mean, it's still not close to Los Angeles. It's still kind of in that Los Angeles market. But I do overall agree with Ben Kenny that they can support the Los Angeles market. Apologize, there's an alarm going off over there. But I do agree with Ben Kenny right there that the Los Angeles market can support multiple races. And I think overall, I think it can happen. And again, they're talking about converting Autocad to a short track. I'll give my opinion on what I think Autocad should be here in a little bit. But I think it's important that they do support, basically have those ticket sales. I think that's something really, really good and important, to be honest with you. I think that having Fontana be two races is important. Having two Los Angeles races is pretty important. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Ryan Preece. And Ryan Preece recently had an interview with Matt Weaver, and he says that he needs to win this year. He quotes by saying that it's what I have to do. There are no ifs, ands, or buts if I want a career. And to do this for a living, that's what I have to do. I do somewhat agree with Ryan Preece on this, but I do think Ryan Preece also being the SHR reserve driver, I don't think that he needs 1,000% needs to basically win a race to basically save his career, because he is a reserve driver. But I understand where Ryan Preece is coming from. Ryan Preece here has a massive opportunity. Of course, he'll be driving a couple races for Ricker Racing. He's got 2 more races racing for Ricker Racing in the Cup Series, and he might get other opportunities to basically race this year in that car. You also have the fact he'll be probably driving a couple races for SS Greenlight Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, because that team's going to be an SHR team. He's going to have a couple races with SS Greenlight Racing. And then in the Truck Series, he's going to be driving for DJR Racing, which I think that he has a very strong chance of winning with DJR Racing. I think he basically won 6 or 7 races with he basically is going to run 6 or 7 races DJR Racing, and he won last year with DJR Racing in his first career Camry World Truck Series start at Nashville Super Speedway. And I think he's got a really good shot of winning with that team this year. And again, I understand where Ryan Preece is coming from. Ryan Preece is trying to basically have a career in the NASCAR career. But again, will say this, like I just mentioned a minute ago, I do think that Ryan Preece will be in the Cup Series in 2023 with SHR, considering Eric Almirola is retiring. And we know that Kevin Hart's future, we don't know how much longer he's going to be in the Cup Series. Potentially 2023 is going to be the last year for Ryan Preece. Overall, in my personal and honest opinion, I think Ryan Preece is on the money when he says he needs to get at least contend for a victory. He's going to have overall a pretty good opportunity to do that where he's going to be able to contend. So overall, hopefully Ryan Preece can get that opportunity. I think Ryan Preece, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated current NASCAR drivers at the moment. And he's going to, again, he has a massive opportunity to contend and win races this year. Hope he can get that done because I think it'd be cool to see Ryan Preece get his first ever Cup Series victory this year. Again, it's going to be tough, but Rick Ware's team this weekend especially, they've shown a lot of pace and a lot of speed. Cody Ware was fast in 51, and Ryan Preece is also really, really quick. So I hope for Ryan Preece's sake, he's right on the money, and he can have a really, really strong opportunity to do good this year. So hopefully he can do that because I think it'd be really, really cool if he was able to get a victory this year in some sort of series, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daniel Suarez and Pato O'Ward. Now, Daniel Suarez was asked in regards, I think, by the media, including Jennifer, and was asked about potential swap with Pato O'Ward. Both of them are Mexican drivers, of course, and he says he sounds like a swap is being discussed for Daniel Suarez and Pato O'Ward in regards to a car swap. Now, of course, what that means would be Daniel Suarez would drive an Indy car and Pato O'Ward would drive a NASCAR car. Now, like I mentioned, Pato O'Ward and Daniel Suarez have a little bit of relation together because I believe both of them are have a relation. I think, again, they're both Mexican drivers, but both of them, I think, are very, very talented and really, really good drivers. Daniel Suarez, of course, has never driven an Indy car, and Pato O'Ward, I think, has had points, has had interest in NASCAR in the past, but also hasn't. But we know that Pato O'Ward, again, we know that drivers have had interest in basically doing driver swaps. And if this driver swap happens, this would not be the first driver swap we've seen in NASCAR. Tony Stewart and Lewis Hamilton back in 2011, I believe, at Watkins Glen, after the Watkins Glen race happened. I think they had this happen, I think, in June or July of that year. And also Jimmy Johnson and Fernando Alonso in 2018 Abu Dhabi ended up happening where basically they were able to have a driver swap. And we saw some interest for Jimmy Johnson. Now he's currently racing open wheel after he had that test and became interested with that. I think driver swaps are really, really cool, and I think they're an important getaway for the sport overall. So I hope it happens where this driver swap happens. So I think it'd be really, really exciting, and I think it'd be really, really cool as hell. So hopefully it happens. I hope a driver swap can happen for both these drivers. So I think it'd be great to see Pato O'Ward in a NASCAR car, and I think it'd be cool to see Daniel Suarez have an opportunity to do some driver swaps with Pato O'Ward as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about a quarter-mile Cups points race. Steve O'Donnell was basically speaking to the media after the Los Angeles Coliseum race, and he said that it's unlikely we'll see a points race with an event like Sunday's on a shorter track with a smaller field in the near future. No surprise here, to be honest with you. I'm not entirely surprised he's saying this, considering I think that the Busch Light Clash is such a different event with the Los Angeles Coliseum. I think it's such a different event than we've ever seen. And again, it's an exhibition event too, because in my opinion, you could not ever have, I think, like a Cups points paying race. I know that we have the Bristol Dirt Race, which has heats and stuff, but that track can fit 40 cars. You're not going to be able to have 23 cars just in your main event. It's not, you can't really have that, and it's not a big enough track to hold 36 or 40 cars on the racetrack at once. That's why only 23 of these cars were able to race. Yes, of course, you have 36 cars were eligible, but you're not going to be able to fit everybody on the racetrack. So I completely understand what Steve O'Donnell is saying right here, that they're not going to probably be able to ever do this. I think it'd be really, really cool if they race on a third-mile track. I know racetrack they can race if they're looking for a dirt paved track. Why not come to I-55 Raceway? I think I-55 is a third-mile track. They could race on a third-mile track. They did that for the Truck Series. But again, a quarter-mile track is probably never going to happen because there's not enough room to put everyone on a quarter-mile track. It's just not enough room to put 36 cars on the track, 36, 40 cars on the track at once. That being said, though, I think in the future, if it was possible, I think it'd be really cool to have a quarter-mile Cup points trainers, but it's not very likely, but I very understand, and I know that people would like that, but let's be honest with you, it's not very likely that there's going to be a quarter-mile points-paying Cup race in the future. So overall, very interesting they brought that up, because there have been some questions, and it doesn't look like that in the future we're going to see that, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next stories of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some of the tempers from this past weekend at the Busch Light Clash. Let's first start off with Aric Almirola and Todd Gilliland. Now, Aric Almirola and Todd Gilliland were battling in the first last chance qualifier, and we saw some tempers flare between the both of them. Aric Almirola was battling with Todd Gilliland. Todd Gilliland, I think, got crammed up by Aric Almirola, and Todd Gilliland came down the racetrack and got into the back of Aric Almirola, and unfortunately, Aric Almirola hit the outside wall really, really hard and got some damage on the right rear of the car, crumpled up the right rear. Now, we've talked about some next-gen concerns concerns, and these drivers race a little bit aggressive, but we saw Eric Almirola also was not very happy with the 38 car, which could lead to a rivalry between both of them, who are Ford drivers. Eric Almirola said he basically just got dumped and got wrecked and was not very happy with Todd Dillon. Todd Dillon did not really seem mad at Eric Almirola. He actually felt really, really bad about what happened. And he did also talk about this next-gen concern, said, especially with the lack of cars we have right now, he said he feels really, really bad overall for what happened. In my opinion, I can tell you he's at fault for the situation. I think Todd Dillon is a little bit at fault. I think Todd Dillon was a little bit over-aggressive. I get you're trying to make it into the main, and Todd actually showed a lot of speed in this race. It looked like he was going to have a chance to make it to the main, but I think he got that damage from the crash. In my opinion, I think Todd Dillon was at fault for the situation and was at fault for the incident. But I understand he's trying to be aggressive and trying to get into the event, but he probably should have held back in that situation. That being said, though, I understand Eric Almirola's frustration. He wants to have a good year in his final year in the Cup Series, and I don't blame him for being frustrated in that incident. To be honest with you, I do not blame him one bit. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we'll talk about the next incident. We're going to talk about Kyle Larson versus Justin Haley. In the main event, we had a restart, I think, around 35 to 40 laps to go after a crash happened. I think this was the Ryan Blaney and Eric Jones incident that we'll get into here just a little bit. But Kyle Larson had an incident with Justin Haley. Kyle Larson gets sent up the track in turn number 3. Kyle Larson then, I think, retaliates against Justin Haley. Now, Kyle Larson apparently thought that Justin Haley was at fault for the incident, but if you actually take a look at the incident, Kyle Larson went after the wrong person. William Byron had gotten into the back of Justin Haley, and Justin Haley got sent to Kyle Larson. Now, Kyle Larson, of course, can see it, and of course, he's not going to go after his teammates since they're basically teammates. Kyle Larson drives down the racetrack and basically forces Justin Haley in the concrete inside wall very, very hard and destroys the left front of Justin Haley's car. And like I said, Kyle Larson was not very happy with Justin Haley for the incident. And Justin Haley, rightfully so, was really, really mad for the incident. He basically called it a BS incident, basically was not very happy with Kyle Larson, but he said that we showed our speed today and showed a lot of pace. In my opinion, if you want my position, I'm a big Kyle Larson fan. I'm wearing a Kyle Larson shirt right now. But in that situation, Kyle Larson's at fault. Kyle Larson should have realized that it was not Justin Haley's fault, and he was too over-aggressive, in my opinion, in that situation. And I've watched Kyle Larson now for 10 years, basically for the last 10 years. I've never seen Kyle Larson get this mad or upset at anybody. I've never seen him get really, really mad. I get it's a Busch Light Clash and you're trying to win and you're a little bit frustrated that you're not up front and leading the race. But at the same time, I feel bad for Justin Haley. Justin Haley, in my opinion, got kind of screwed in that situation, in that incident. And again, it was not, in my personal opinion, it was not Justin Haley's fault in that situation. It was William Byron's fault for causing the incident. I get Kyle Larson being frustrated and upset because he's trying to go out there and win. But at the same time, I think he took it out on the wrong person, in my honest opinion. That being said, though, that's my opinion on the incident with Kyle Larson and Justin Haley. I think Justin Haley was innocent in that situation, and I do not blame Justin Haley for being upset in that situation with Kyle Larson. And again, Kyle Larson was a little bit over-aggressive, in my opinion, and should have held back just a little bit more than some of the aggression he had put on. So that'd be really, really frustrating. I feel bad for Justin Haley, and I'm not the happiest I was Kyle Larson right there, as Kyle Larson was a little bit way too over-aggressive, in my opinion. But that's my opinion on the situation with Kyle Larson and Justin Haley, and I hope that in the future, I hope Kyle Larson was able to apologize, and I do not blame him for being upset, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the major and final incident with this event. Let's talk about Ryan Blaney and Eric Jones, shall we? Ryan Blaney was not very happy with Eric Jones at the end of this race. Ryan Blaney basically was up front, I think around 7th or 8th position. Both him and Eric Jones were having very, very strong runs in the top 10 of the Busch Light Clash. And Ryan Blaney got basically hit in the back by Eric Jones. Eric Jones basically was not happy with Ryan Blaney for the incident. He got into the back of Ryan Blaney and basically forced Ryan Blaney and basically cut his right rear down. I think he got some suspension damage. And Ryan Blaney, after this incident, was very, very upset about the situation. He got a lot of damage in that incident. And unfortunately for Ryan Blaney, he got really, really mad out of his car, hopped over the fence, and decided to basically throw the Hans device at Eric Jones. And then Ryan Blaney in his interview said that overall he was very, very upset and very, very angry at Ryan Blaney. He was not the happiest with Eric Jones in that situation. Basically threw the Hans device. In his interview said, we're basically battling for 7th or 8th. I really don't understand. Now, Fox did not do a really good job catching it. Had Fox catch that incident, we could have had a really could have, in my opinion, gotten a lot of cool promotion for that. Fox, you need to do better with that. You should have been able to catch an incident with Erik Jones and Ryan Blaney. Erik Jones, after finishing the top 5, he was interviewed by Fox, and Jones said he was mad that Ryan Blaney cut him off. So Erik Jones had a little bit of frustration right there, but cut Ryan Blaney. It was Ryan Blaney. I understand his frustration too. Again, I like Kyle Larson. I've never seen Ryan Blaney be upset at any driver force, so that was a big surprise to me, how upset Ryan Blaney was with Erik Jones. Again, it's a Busch Light clash. He's trying to go out there and win and stuff, but I also understand the frustration too for Ryan Blaney. He's trying to have a good run, trying to start the year off on the right footing. It wasn't having overall the best run of the season. That being said, though, in my opinion, I think Ryan Blaney and Erik Jones is what it is. This could lead to a rivalry between those two. They both did seem like they didn't like each other after the event, and overall, it seemed like Ryan Blaney was not the happiest with Erik Jones in the situation. So overall, if you want my opinion on it, I think both, it is what it is, and it's cool to see that there's more rivalries popping up in NASCAR, to be honest with you. We're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about stadium racing. Now, there were some questions asked in regards to the future of stadium racing, and this was in response to NASCAR's spot. This is reported by Adam Stern, by the way. He said, as of right now, things are trending incredibly positive, but we'll take a step back and see whether we want to return to the Coliseum next year or potentially somewhere else domestically or internationally. And this is basically a question in regards to the future of stadium racing. In my opinion, I think stadium racing, at least somewhat, I think is really cool. I will talk more about the LA Coliseum in the future, that later in this episode, but I think stadium racing is something that's really cool. And I think in the future, if we don't come back to the LA Coliseum, I think in the future we should try to maybe in the future go like international racing and stuff. I think in US, of course, you've got a lot of really cool stadiums. You've got like here in St. Louis, you've got the Edward Jones and that hosts dirt racing. I think that'd be a great area. You've also got Busch Stadium, which I think that'd be very hard to do a race there, but you've also got St. Louis where you could go there as well. You've also got areas like New York and Denver where you can end up racing, and among those areas. You do also have potential going international. You could go to Rome for like the Roman Coliseum if you want to set that up. You can go to London. You can go to Paris. You've got so many areas that you could go to in the future that stadiums. And stadiums are so hard to set up, and they don't cost the most money because the track is already there and the stadium's already there. And all you have to do is build inside the racetrack. And if you want to go international and don't want to go on the streets and stuff, this could be really important for the future. And I think stadium racing could be something really cool that they run in the future. Overall, if you might want my overall opinion on stadium racing, I think it was really exciting. We'll talk about the LA Coliseum in its future later in this episode, but I think the idea of having some sort of stadium racing in the future, I think is really exciting and really cool as well at other areas. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the 2023 schedule. Now, Ben Kennedy was asked in regards to what the 2023 schedule looked like, and he says that we won't likely see as many changes as we did in 2021 or 2022 with the NASCAR schedule. This does not surprise me, to be honest with you. NASCAR really overhauled the schedule in 2021, made a ton of changes, added a ton of racetracks in 2021. Of course, we had the Indianapolis Road Course in 2021 added. We also added Bristol Dirt to the schedule, added COTA, added a lot of tracks to the schedule in 2000. Also, Road America as well got added to the 2021 schedule. And we also, in 2022, we saw some changes happen to the 2022 schedule as well. Of course, we saw Worldwide Technology Race would finally get a cup date. And of course, the Los Angeles Coliseum got a cup date as well in 2022. But like he mentioned, they said that the likelihood of as many changes happening is not entirely surprising to me. I do think we're going to see more short tracks, and I think in the future, in like 2024 and 2025, I do think we're going to see some more changes. You look at what NASCAR is trying to do. There's talks of a Chicago Street Course potentially happening for 2023. We keep hearing rumblings about that, about the Chicago Street Course. We haven't heard much, but we keep hearing potential rumblings about a street course potentially in 2023 in the Chicago area. There was talk that we were going to add in 2022, but NASCAR decided to not budge on that and decided not to add a race in 2022. That, but there's talk in 2023 that it's very possible there might be a race there. But you also got other like tracks you could go to. You've got the Northwest area. You've got Portland, where the NASCAR Xfinity Series is holding a race right now. So you potentially could have a cup race up in the Portland area. There's a lot of areas NASCAR could go to in the future. If I'm NASCAR, if we're looking at the future of the 2023 schedule, like I mentioned with Denver, you've got the Midwest area where you can have more racing out there. You've got a lot of major opportunities and a lot of potential tracks that you could go to in the future. So overall, in my honest and sincere opinion, I do think in the future, NASCAR has a lot of major options in the near future. And I think that we could see a lot of great things for the future of NASCAR scheduling priorities. But we're going to be paying attention to schedule long term and see what happens with that. But I do think NASCAR has a lot of major opportunities here to go to a lot of different areas. You can go internationally and go to a lot of different areas in 2023 and go to a lot of different places and a lot of types of different tracks as well. And maybe if we go there, Joe Logano wins, considering Joe Logano wins on any type of new track we go to. But that being said, I think it'd be really, really cool to see some changes. But again, I'm not entirely surprised that NASCAR's really talking about making a lot of major and insane changes with the NASCAR schedule. So in my opinion, that's not a major surprise to me that they're talking about not adding as many changes to the 2023 schedule. Not a major surprise to me, to be perfectly honest with you. So we'll have to keep an eye on the schedule long term. But NASCAR not changing a lot of things in the schedule would not be very shocking to me, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Auto Club. Now, basically, I had a little bit of a pressing on Saturday evening, and Dave Allen, who's the president of Auto Club, says that he's optimistic the short track renovation project will move forward, but it's still being evaluated. They also said that used the word if when discussing the short track transformation and said the 2023 race possibly will be on the 2-mile track. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I do think long term that Auto Club is going to end up becoming a short track, but I do not think in 2023 Auto Club is going to become a short track, especially since we've really not heard much on that. And there's been some rumblings around the industry that has been talked that Auto Club may not become a short track in 2023 because we've heard that for a while that NASCAR still wants to make it a short track in the future, but it looks like right now that they're not potentially going to have a short track race by 2023 and might remain a 2-mile track. And I'll tell you right now, I think especially with the potential of LA Coliseum come back in 2023, I would be okay if Auto Club stayed a 2-mile track. I do think that they're going to have to repave Auto Club, and I know people are not going to be happy with me saying that because we want more short tracks, right? But you got a lot of short tracks that are potentially coming in the future. You've got the National Fairgrounds potentially returning in the near future. If that doesn't have any more issues, we may see the National Fairgrounds return. You've got North Wilkesboro, and they're working on that. You've got a lot of tracks in NASCAR is currently working on right now, trying to bring back, and not to mention a lot of different areas that they could go to for short tracks and other types of racing as well. And I know that they want to make Auto Club a short track. And again, I think another short track would be really, really awesome. But at the same time, I think would not see Auto Club change. But I do think with the success of the LA Coliseum, the first time that event, I do think that there's a very strong possibility that Auto Club may end up getting cut in to a short track. But I do think that the longer they wait, the less likely it's going to happen. So I think we won't see Auto Club turn into a short track in 2023. But anything's really possible at this point. It's very possible they might end up, but they're not, like I said, they're not advertising it this as the final race on the 2-mile track. So it's very likely that in 2023, we're still going to be on the 2-mile track. So what do we see happens in regards to the future of Auto Club Speedway, if it's going to return as a more bigger than a 2-mile track, or if it's stay a 2-mile track, or if it's going to be cut down. But if you want my honest opinion, I know the last couple years haven't been the most amazing races in Auto Club, but if you want my honest and sincere opinion, I like to see Auto Club kept as a 2-mile track. I think it'd be better for the fans and be better for the sport. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the future of Auto Club. But it looks like as right now, the Auto Club may not convert to a short track in 2023. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. But it doesn't look like Auto Club will be converting to a 2-mile track in 2023. But that's just my honest opinion on that. I don't think it will convert in 2023, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are going to go ahead and talk about Tony Stewart. Now, Tony Stewart was speaking on the broadcast when he was with Jeff Gordon, when Jeff Gordon, of course, also on the broadcast to talk a little bit about the race. And by the way, Jeff Gordon started to look like Rick Hendrick, by the way. But Tony Stewart was on the broadcast, of course, broadcasting the NASCAR on Fox coverage for the first race. And he said while watching the race, he says he has the itch to race again in the Cup Series after watching the heat races. I will tell you right now, I think it would be freaking badass and freaking awesome if Tony Stewart came back just for a one-off race in the NASCAR Cup Series. There is some talk and conversation around Tony Stewart potentially running in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and racing on a one-off in basically in a second SHR car in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. There's a lot of talk in the industry potentially of that happening. There have been talk in 2020 that he was actually going to drive, I think, a second SHR car, but unfortunately due to the fans not being allowed to be there 2 years ago at the Indianapolis Road Course, Tony Stewart decided against running at the Indianapolis Road Course. But I will say I'd love to see Tony Stewart do a one-off cup race in the future just for his own team or different organization. I know that with he wouldn't be probably able to drive for his own organization due to the fact that there's that car limit right now with the charters. So he'd have to run for a team like Ricker Racing. But of course, he'd get massive SHR backing and probably be up front. But again, the last time Tony Stewart did race in the Cup Series was in 2016. So if we saw Tony Stewart race, it would probably most likely be at like the Busch Light Clash. I think having like veterans like Tony Stewart out there and people like Tony Stewart who've raced in Cup Series, I think would be really, really awesome. I think we're pledging for Tony Stewart to maybe have a one-off return in the Cup Series. Again, there is still a very big possibility that Tony Stewart could run in NASCAR Xfinity Series this year and do a one-off return. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think if you got Tony Stewart, in my opinion, if you got Tony Stewart out on the racetrack to do a one-off return in the Cup Series, I think that'd be very, very cool. And you look at the interest of the next-gen car and how many people were excited. Even Clint Boyer, who was basically did test the next-gen car, Bowman Gray, he was getting really, really excited. We saw Jeff Gordon get a little bit excited on the broadcast. So after the LCQs, he said, maybe I don't want to be out there. But I think it would be very, very fun and very, very cool if we got to see Tony Stewart come back and do a one-off in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think it'd be not only very, very entertaining for the NASCAR Cup Series fans who are watching the event, I think it'd be really awesome to have Tony Stewart out there. So maybe we'll see Tony Stewart in the future come back and run like a one-off in the Cup Series. I'm not like 100% confident it will happen, but it could happen in the future, and maybe we'll see Tony Stewart in the future come back and run a one-off event in the Cup Series. I think it'd be really, really fun. I think it'd be really, really awesome, and I think it'd be really great for the future of the sport, to be honest with you, if we got to see Tony Stewart do at least a one-off return in the NASCAR Cup Series. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we are talking about JTG Daugherty Racing. Now, we talked about this on the channel, I think, on Thursday or Friday about JTG Daugherty's future. And JTG Daugherty, there have been rumors that Jordan Bianchi had been saying and Jeff Gluck saying that there was potential of JTG Daugherty Racing could end up being sold and being shut down. And there have been talk maybe JTG Daugherty Racing was going to shut down after 2022. They've been evaluating their potential plans of shutting down, and there still have been conversation in industry about JTG Daugherty Racing shutting down. But we got an update in regards to JTG Daugherty Racing, and it looks like JTG Daugherty Racing is not going to be shutting down here after the 2022 season. Basically, one of the spokespersons for JTG Daugherty Racing says that they have reaffirmed JTG's commitment to the sport, and they are already well into planning for the 2023 season. This does not shock me. This does not surprise me. And honestly, it's a really, really good thing to see that JTG Daugherty Racing is looking at returning to NASCAR in 2023. I think the more teams in the Cup Series you have, the better it's going to be. And I know, like I said, they've been downsized, so we all thought maybe they were going to basically leave. But there's also been talk in the industry, maybe they could in the future expand to, once again, to a two-car operation. Like I mentioned, they've got one car currently in the NASCAR Cup Series right now. But you do have to remember that JTG Daugherty Racing does not have massive Chevy backing compared to all the other Chevy teams in there. They don't have as much of a major Chevy backing compared to the other Chevy teams. So that's another reason why we had kind of heard maybe they were looking at shutting down. But I think having a team like JTG Daugherty Racing return to the Cup Series in 2023 is a really good thing. Like I said, the more teams you have in the Cup Series, the better it's going to be. And again, it's still very possible that JTG Daugherty Racing could end up saying, hey, we can end up selling and maybe selling our charter to another organization. But to me, I think with them saying that they're looking to return in 2023, I think it's a great thing for the sport overall if they can return. So I want to see this team return. I think that this team has a lot of potential. I think the fact that they did make the decision to downsize to one car, I think was a really, really important decision, because that second car, I think, was overall holding back their performance as an organization and as a race team. So them downsizing this year to one car operation and focusing maybe just what they need to overall help their performance as an organization. So I want to see them return in 2023, and it looks like they're going to be returning in 2023. Like I said, having an organization like JTG Daugherty Racing coming back to the NASCAR Cup Series, I think is very, very important to, especially to the future of your success of an organization. Having a team come back in the future, I think, is really, really important. So I want to see them return. I hope they do return 2023, and it looks like their commitment and they're working on their plans for 2023 as well. So hopefully they return. Hopefully it does happen for them. I think having a team like JTG Daugherty Racing coming back is important. And one thing I do hope for JTG Daugherty Racing itself is I do hope that they do go ahead and basically get more of the Chevy backing. I think Chevy needs to work with every team in the Cup Series. They've got a good partnership with Hendrick Motorsports. They've got a good partnership with Collin Racing, I think. I think they've got a partnership with RCR. Why not go ahead and try to have a more in-depth partnership with even some of your smaller teams, including JTG Daugherty Racing? I think if they had a better technical alliance with JTG Daugherty Racing, I'm talking about Chevy, I think that they would be in a much better position as a whole. So LJT Racing 6 around for the long term. I think eventually, and I do think that in the future as well, I think that they will expand to a 2-car operation. Now, that, of course, will be dependent if charters to return after 2024. There, again, charter value is going down right now, but if you were going to sell your team, right, I think that if you were going to sell your team, I think 2021 would have been a year to do it with the team, all these teams coming in, because the value of charters right now is not going to be as high. So overall, I think JT Daugherty Racing, with them saying that they're refueling in their future, I think is really, really good. And hopefully we do see them continue racing in 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Los Angeles Coliseum and the potential of them returning in 2023. Now, NASCAR's been talking about the potential of this LA Coliseum, and Ben Kennedy says there's a potential future here at the Los Angeles Coliseum. But NASCAR did say, and they did mention it, they said that they're going to evaluate what happens, I think, after Daytona 500, and then they're going to make their decision if they want to return here in 2023. Now, NASCAR, while right now the only time they may race here is 2022, they have the option right now to at least race here for the next 2 years. Now, they have, I think, 89 days from today. They have until 90 days after to basically decide if they want to come back and run this event in 2023 and 2024 as well. Again, there's option years for those events. If you want my honest opinion, after how much success the first year was, I think they absolutely need to return. One, you got a lot of younger demographic that showed up to the track. There was a lot of younger fans, and again, NASCAR's got a lot of older fan base. So to see all those younger fans and younger audience show up to the track, I think that's something really, really important. Two, I think another big reason why is a new market. Basically, there were 70% of fans that were at that event that have never been to a NASCAR race. Now, that does not mean that NASCAR, that means that all those new fans who are at the track have never raced, have never watched a NASCAR race before. It's just they may never have gone out to Fontana, or they may have never gone out to Sonoma, because again, those races haven't been absolutely amazing in the last couple of years. And with Los Angeles being the center of Los Angeles, that's an important market. Like I mentioned, also Los Angeles is one of the biggest massive markets in the United States. If you want to step in there, you want to have a lot of fans there. Also, of course, it like the advertising stuff in the Los Angeles Coliseum. It is one of the most historic places there. They've hosted World Series and just hosted one of the better Clash races. Plus, I think that the Clash happening in Los Angeles and keeping it there, the race is absolutely incredible. And I think they put on a really, really great event. And I think NASCAR did win yesterday. I think NASCAR put on an incredible show and an incredible event. And you look at some other major aspects and some major important things as well with this event. You had, I think, a really cool halftime show with Ice Cube. I do think next year, though, they need to let fans be a little bit closer to the halftime show. And the same thing goes for Pitbull. Pitbull, I think, put on a really good pre-race show. And the fans, in my opinion, need to be a little more culture when it comes to that. Another big thing is in my opinion, you want to get fans more involved with it, right? And also, Los Angeles fans are a little bit weird too. They all showed up very, very late and left early. And again, I think they were projecting about 50,000 fans that did show up to the event as a whole, and that's a lot of fans for the event. And there are some people that are saying maybe 60,000 showed up instead of 50,000 fans. And again, you look at the crowd for the Los Angeles Coliseum, you're not going to get that crowd in Daytona. That's why they left Daytona and came to Los Angeles. The crowds were dwindling in Daytona, and in my opinion, it has revitalized the Los Angeles Coliseum. I think in the future, if they wanted to, they could go ahead and try this event as an all-star race in the future as well. Maybe have this as the all-star race after the Coke 600 future, and then go right over to Sonoma to keep it in the West Coast. I think if they were wanting to do that and change it up, I think it'd be cool if they had that as it. I don't think they need to make this a points-paying race. The only time you need to have it is if this is an exhibition event, whether it's the Busch Light Clash or the all-star race. But I think that the LA Coliseum put on an incredible event. A lot of younger audiences watch. And you look at how many people were really hyped. There were people at the track, they said they've never been more hyped for an event. And I felt so hyped about this event. Again, of course, I'm more hyped for the Daytona 500. But I have not felt that much hype going into a race in a very, very long time. So to me, I think they need to return in 2023. Because I think it'll be really, really awesome and really great for the sport as well. So I do hope, in my opinion, they do return in 2023 and 2024 as well. So anyway, that's for today's long NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on be notified when a video does go live onto my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links are below for that. And comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about NASCAR? Do you think NASCAR should return to Los Angeles Coliseum or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what is about JT Daugherty Racing? Do you think that they will continue racing in 2023 or not? Let me know in the comments below. I've got some special products that are on the way right before the season. I might have some driver lineup videos that may drop for the Xfinity Series and truck series here in the future, but I'm not sure yet. Stick your eyes on the channels. I got some videos that are on the way, including potentially doing Super Bowl picks for the 2022 Super Bowl. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.